without the division. Your information station. This morning, special morning. This morning, we have Dr. Umar Johnson on, on the seat with us. Beautiful conversation we're having this morning. Trying to pick the brother's brain, see where he's coming from. Dr. Umar Johnson. So here it is, right? Why is your message? Why, given the history of black civil rights leaders in the past, my family members of yours, Frederick Douglass and so forth, why such a radical approach to what you're doing? Conspiracy theorists, would say that you are a plant, because we do know, one of the things that was said, I don't know if it was J. Edgar Hoover, one of them, said, they're going to make sure that no black nation rise up, we don't rise up like we did before in the 60s and back in the day, right? So speak to us about that. Why such a radical approach?
Well, for me, I don't consider it radical. I consider it to be the only solution. I consider it to be based on common sense and a thorough assessment of history. The question that I would ask people is, what is the alternative? There is no alternative. We did everything else. We didn't try to participate. We didn't try to get accepted. That's just not going to happen. You've never found a nation in history where the enslaved population were ever given the full rights of the free population. That's never happened. And when you factor into the psychology of white racism, the psychology of racism, you understand that all white people are racist and that they will always practice racism. They don't know how to do anything else. That's who they are. It's part of their psychohistory. So unless you want to remain a permanent second-class citizen, and most black people are content with doing so. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why you haven't seen more progress from black America. We won't admit it. The average black man and woman in America will never admit it. But the truth is, we are perfectly content being the underclass in this country. As long as we can drive a nice car,
I got my Benz.
As long as we can get our hair done, as long as we can buy some Timberlands and some Air Jordans and watch the NBA Finals, most black people are content with being on the bottom. And the reason that contentment comes so easy to be a permanent underclass is because we're comparing our condition today to slavery. And that's where a lot of our mistakes come in, because we're looking at how we came from servitude. So if you're looking at slavery, the enslavement, the dehumanization of African people, you say, well, we must have come a long way, because look at what we went through 200 years ago. But see, I do not judge our condition from slavery. Okay, I judge our condition from our original greatness on the African continent. And when you compare what black America is compared to our original greatness on the African continent, there's no way at all you could be content with this. See, for the Pan-Africanists, we just don't want a slice of bread. You got some black people, they just want a slice of bread from the American social order. And then you got other black people who want a loaf of bread. And then you got other black people who want to be able to make their own bread. But for the Pan-Africanists, we don't want a slice. We don't want a whole loaf. We don't even want to be able to make the bread. We want to own the factory that the bread is made in. And so for us, until there is self-rule, self-government, until African people have the ability to dictate their own fate like everyone else does, then we haven't made any freedom. There's been no progress. See, we're looking at progress from the definition of the integrationist. Progress from the definition of the integrationist is to what extent have black people been able to convince white people to accept them. So for the integrationists, having the black mayor, having a black governor, having black people move into a white neighborhood, having the first black president, that equals progress. For the Pan-Africanists, that's no progress at all. Progress is purely to what extent have you been able to improve your ability to protect, create, and project your independent reality into the future. And coming from that perspective, we haven't made much progress. When slavery ended, black America owned one half of 1% of all the wealth in America. 0.5%. Here we are 152 years after the chains have been removed, and we still only own 0.5% of all the wealth in America. So how can there have been progress? Only if you're interested in being accepted by white folks can you claim that we've made progress. But if you're interested in controlling your community and controlling its economics and its politics and its direction and its education, then we haven't made any progress. In fact, we went backwards.
Amen. All right, you listening it live here, Dr. Umar Johnson, 963 IMG. So let me ask you this. What's the definition of a conspiracy theory or a conspiracy theorist?
Well, to be honest, here's the thing. And again, it goes back to our love for white people and our love for the government. Mm. Anything that the government says is the gospel truth to black people. Anything. They say that there was a conspiracy from the Arabs that led to 9/11. So obviously 9/11 was the result of a foreign government and not the United States itself. They tell you that James Earl Ray killed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They tell you that AIDS was not invented in Maryland at the United States Army Biological Weapons Lab. AIDS came from a monkey in the Congo that had sex with a woman. They tell you that there is no deliberate intent for police to exterminate black people, that all of these incidences of police killing unarmed black men were purely incidental and it's not systematic. And because they say that, black people consider it to be the gospel truth, when in reality, those are the conspiracy theories. The government is the biggest conspiracy theorist. But see, we believe any truth that antagonizes the United States government or implicates it in any systematic wrongdoing against black people is automatically a conspiracy theory. And we say that because we are loyal to the government. You can prove that James Earl Ray didn't kill Dr. King. You can prove that the United States government invented AIDS. In fact, a brother by the name of Dr. Boyd Graves did just that. A homosexual naval officer proved that the government invented AIDS and was going to sue the United States government at International Criminal Court, and the CIA assassinated him. You see, so the conspiracy theories, are really being created by the government, but because black people are so loyal and have so much love for America, anything that is said against America, especially implicating the country in any type of systematic oppression or systematic genocide against black people, is simply unbelievable to people who went to public school for 13 years and pledged the flag 180 days to each of those 13 years. So we've been so brainwashed by this country that anything said against it automatically becomes a problem for us.
Interesting indeed. Wow. What, so let me pivot a little bit. What role does, the black church, has to play in all of this? Because see, I am one who believe that, our church should stand up. And if our church stand out, there's so many churches, especially, in the area where I live, that there shouldn't be any crime if all the churches doing what they're supposed to do, and all the people going to church, or the people on the outside that's, committing the crime or allowing certain crimes to be committed in our neighborhoods, then, if we stand up, we should see, lifestyle stand out. We should see definitely an impact and a change in the society in which we live. And, a lot of my church family don't share that opinion with me, but that is indeed my opinion. And that's the only one that I do to stand on. But tell me, where do you see the church stand as far as all of this is concerned, as far as church and politics?
The black church is the original vanguard of the black community. Every major struggle that we have endured since we've gotten to America was largely created by and led by the black church. The anti-slavery movement, those were preachers on the forefront of that. Some people forget that even Frederick Douglass, my ancestor, he was even an A&E preacher for a period of time. The civil rights struggle, Of course, you had Stokely Carmichael, you had the students, you had a lot of people who were not clergy, but clergy made up the bulk of the grassroots leadership. Jim Crow. Even when you look at the Garvey movement, although the Garvey movement was the only major organization we've had that did not have a religious overtone, but it was large. There were a lot of clergy involved in the Garvey movement. So the black church has always been at the forefront for every freedom struggle that black people have had to pursue. However, in the post-Dr. King assassination era, the black church was forced to reinvent itself. And the black church evolved from being an antagonist organization. The black church was an antagonistic organization. It fought for jobs. It fought for the vote. It fought for equality. It fought against Jim Crow. It fought to end slavery. I mean, Nat Turner was a preacher. Many of our slave revolt leaders were preachers. So that just speaks to the revolutionary history of the black church. Much of what we've gotten as a people came through the church. The black church has done more for black people historically than any black organization you can name.
What
in fact,
happened,
you can put
man?
them all together, and the black church did more for them. The problem is in the post-Dr. King era, the black church reinvented itself, and it evolved from being antagonistic to accommodationist. It became accommodationist. The black church also evolved itself from a charitable organization to a capitalistic organization. So the black church evolved from helping people to making people sacrifice economically to build it up. So the church became parasitic as opposed to being charitable. And so in the year 2000, this was intensified when former President George W. Bush put forth the faith-based initiative policy. That right there, more than anything since Dr. King's assassination, really created the passive, cowardly, economically exploitative black church. Because what George Bush did, which was very Machiavellian, because it was a setup for the Obama years, and what George Bush did was he found a loophole in the law that allowed churches to actually access government funding, which until the 21st century, George Bush's election was heretofore illegal because of the separation of church and state clause in the government. You cannot use public funds to serve private ends. So George Bush found a loophole, and he created the FBI. The FBI, the new FBI, faith-based initiative, which basically made many preachers the new agents and informants in the black community. Under the FBI, once you get government money, you're not allowed to be political. Once you get government money, you're not allowed to be a revolutionary. You can't be an adjutant.
Pause.
Anymore.
Pause. That one just went like, I need to pause you on this one. You're saying there is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and then there's the new FBI. There's another
the faith-based
FBI
initiative is the new COINTELPRO. The mega churches are the new COINTELPRO. With the FBI money, the government now has a relationship with the black church, where the black church has became the informant for revolutionary activity on a grassroots level. In other words, 50 years ago, if J. Edgar Hoover wanted to know what Dr. King and Malcolm X were up to, they had to go find, some ex-cons on the street and threaten them with more prison time to go and, infiltrate the organizations. Mm-hmm. That's how Hoover had to operate. He had to get regular black citizens to infiltrate black organizations. Now, they don't have to do that as much. They can go straight to the pastor because they're funding the pastor. The pastor is getting grants from the government. So that makes the church a government constituent.
So now there's no separate between church and state.
They can go straight to the pastor. Exactly. And say, what is Umar Johnson doing in New York City? And the pastor will tell them because the pastor don't want to lose his shut-up money, i.e. grants. The worst thing the black church could have done was start taking grant money from white corporations and the U.S. government. And that's why you haven't seen the black church, and I'm speaking collectively here because there are exceptions to the rule. Mm-hmm. And I acknowledge those exceptions as someone who speaks in churches regularly. I'll be speaking at a church in Brooklyn on June the 2nd. So I know that there's exceptions to this rule, and I'm principally speaking of the mega churches, the medium size and the mega churches, not the small mom and pop storefront churches. They don't have enough capital to get involved in this game. But the mega churches, they are deeply entrenched in this game. And this is why you haven't seen the black church at the forefront of the police genocide against black males. You don't see the black church at the forefront of miseducation. You don't